So yeah, I just started recording. This is where we're at. Yeah, so this use effect, just to review this gets called when we're mounted. So what we want to do is when we mount, we want to grab our data. So here, want to get data from API. So let's create a function called get users, because that's the data we're going to get user data. So inside of here, I'm going to create a function called get users. So let's go ahead and define that const get users. Okay, now that's defined. Okay, I want to show you something. Let's say I come in here and I do something like, let me try to cause an error. Like I'm going to set let x equal undefined. And I'm going to call this x.break because x is undefined. So if I try to like call a function, it's going to, I should get an error. You know, cannot read break, cannot read property break of undefined. So this is an error, blows up. My computer's not working. I'm going to wrap this in what's called a try catch block. And then we're going to do a console.log error. Or I could do, another thing we can do in JavaScript is what's called an alert. So alert pops up this box. You've seen those boxes pop up before, right? Hey, click on this for this or whatever. So now I can click on that and that goes away. So what's happening here is I'm causing an error. But instead of my error just crashing my app, I catch the error and I can handle it differently. So that's what the try catch allows me to do. I can try to do something, and if at any point in there it breaks, I'm going to catch it. And I'm not going to have JavaScript just break. Just see if this is not in the try catch and I do that, we get an error, red death. See, we might not want that to happen for like an actual user. We might want to handle this a little more gracefully so the user doesn't see this. You know, it's not going to prevent the thing from breaking, but we're still going to get the error. But now we just get, it looks a little different and our app doesn't go away. Does that make sense? So that's the try catch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to do an Axios call here. We briefly saw this, but I grabbed on Friday, but let's just pretend like we haven't. So I'm grabbing this Axios thing that I am just added. So once again, I can tab complete this. And when we import stuff from our node modules, we don't need to give it a path. By default, it's going to know, if we don't give it a relative path, it's going to go look in our node modules folder for this Axios project. And I showed you that was in my node modules folder. So it's going to go look for that Axios folder, and then it's going to go import Axios from that. And now we can do a get request. Well, where do I want to go? I want to go to this URL. And then here we can keep this alert here. Maybe I can make it a little more, the message something like specific, you know, error occurred getting users, and then maybe I can console.log that error. And then I'm going to console.log the response. So let's just kind of review where we're at before we see this. So we have our app component and we've defined this use effect. This use effect gets called after our component mounts. So when we refresh our page, we should mount the component. Our get user is going to get called. We're going to do a get request to this URL and get back some data that we're going to set equal to this response. And then we're going to log that response. If this doesn't work, if for some reason this breaks, maybe their server's down, we're going to go to our catch segment. And then we can handle the error there. So I'm going to go back to my app. I'm going to inspect. And so then I get back a promise on line 16. So if you see this promise, this should be, what this is saying is this call right here is returning a promise, which means it's saying, hey, this is going to take a second for me to do. And you need to wait for me to finish. And I promise you I'll finish. That's essentially what I promise you. I'll either successfully finish or successfully give you an error. Like I'm going to either work or not work. So if you see this promise, we need to remember to do the async await syntax. So to do that, I'm going to make my function async by throwing the async keyword. Async. By throwing the async keyword in front of the parentheses. And now I can use the await syntax. And boom, there is my response. So my response is just an object that has config, data, headers. So I really care about this data. So let's log res.data. Let's refresh this. There's my data. That looks like that's another object that has page per page, and it also has data on it. If I look at data, hey, look, there's a list of users. So I actually, to grab my users, I need to do res.data.data. That's just how that server is sending me back this response. So if I refresh that now I have an array of objects, which are which have, you know, the keys, avatar, email, first, ID, last name. Now I'm ready to now I have some stuff to loop over that. What do you think would happen if I misspelled this API to app? What error am I going to get?
Is it a 400 error?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a 400 error. So there's my error. So I try to do that, but now their server is going to give me back a 400 error. And there it is. There's the 404. So that's a page not found. So I went to their server and said, hey, give me app users page. And their server is going to say, hey, we don't have that. Here's a 400 error back. So there's the 404 error. So as we're starting to work with React, it's important to have this console open so you can see these errors pop up, because this is going to help you debug. because now I see a 404 error. I'm like, okay, well, that gives me a lot of information about what's going wrong. Questions on this? Let me Slack this out.
Sorry, I think I missed a little bit of the first part, but did you add something to a file, something to do with Axios?
Yeah, so for that, I came to my terminal and I did a yarn add Axios. So make sure you run this in your React project directory. And then that will add, because this is a third-party package that we need to add to our project.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I am still, like, I saw you get this error, but I didn't really see, I think it was this error, but I didn't see how you resolved it. But I get use effect is not defined and my page fails to compile. And I've like, looking at your code, I'm not seeing anything different between mine and yours.
Probably right up here.
Oh, yep, there it is. Thank you. My bad.
Nope, no problem. Yeah, so we need to import, these are what are called hooks. So if we want to use a React hook, we need to import them to use them. So a lot of languages will have, they'll have stuff like predefined in them. Like JavaScript, I can probably use like this document object. Does it not want that in React? Maybe React doesn't like that. Or like I can do like a new date. Like sometimes stuff can be, you know, there. It's just JavaScript has defined this. But other things like use effect or Axios, like I might need to import those to use them.
So I have them imported, but I'm still getting like a fail to compile error as well.
You want to, or what's the error? Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I can share my screen.
That's good. Can we get to look at some of these errors? Is it an Axios error? I guess we can look at it.
This is what it says.
Okay.
Syntax error?
Yeah, so this one is saying you are unexpected reserve word await. So if you want to use that await keyword, you need to make your function async. So line 13, you need to, and I can share my screen and show you.
Okay.
If you want it, because it's the async await feature. So, oh my gosh, what have I done?
I see it.
Right here. If I want to use await, I have to make my function async.
Oh, gotcha.
So my import counter from counter at the top of the apps.js is kind of like dull. It's not the same color as the rest. Is there something you changed on the counter page that I didn't keep up to date maybe?
No, if that just means you're not using it. So if I import something and I don't use it, what counter is declared, but its value is never read. So it's just saying, hey, you're importing this, but you're not using it. So you should probably either use it or get rid of that import. It's not going to break anything, but it's just kind of messy. Like it's like, hey, this is messy code right here. But if I use it, then it's highlighting saying, yeah, you're using this.
Oh, I actually just found what it was. I had an extra little bracket, deleted that, and it was good again.
All right. So let's move on. Do I do this in here? I guess I'll just. So yeah, I guess let's just. So I have two options here. I could kind of, I could do all of this stuff in my app component, or I could make a separate like users component to handle like rendering the users. And let's go ahead and just do it here. I think it'd be cleaner to create the users component, but I think it's going to be maybe simpler to start to just do everything in this app.js file. So now I have this users data. And I'm going to want to like have this be stateful data because my users could change. Because technically when I load my app, I don't have any users. Like when my app first renders, I don't have any because I have to do the API call. And then once I get them, then I can set the users to what I got back. So I want to have some user state. So I can create, or I'm going to grab my use state hook from React. And then const, I can call these variables whatever, but this is users. It's going to be an array of users. And then I can, this second one is always just a good convention. It's just to say set and then whatever you called that state. So I have user state. So I'm going to call this second one set users. This is going to be equal to my use state hook. Now by default, I want this to either be like maybe null, or I think better yet, I think like an empty array would be good. Because I'm expecting users to be in an array of objects. So by a good default value for that is just, an empty array, which would mean no users. Then down here, I'm going to create a function called render users. And this function is going to be responsible for mapping over my user data. So const render users. I could do something like this. I could say, hey, if users dot length equals 0, maybe I just return no users. Else I can return users.map. Let's go through each user and let's just wrap this in it. Let's return this. We can do our div. And let's for now maybe just do like a user.name. And this is JSX, so I need to interpolate that. I actually think it's coming back as first name. Let me double check.
So is that function going to take all of the names? Pull all the names out?
It's going to go through our users. It's going to map over them. It's going to create a new array of 8 of these JSX elements that will be a div wrapped in an H1. And sorry, I misspelled that first, user.first name. Because here's this is kind of hard to read right here, but this is what my data is going to look like. Like one user has this information. It has an ID, has an email, has a first name, has a last name, and has an avatar. So for now, I'm just going to I'm going to go through each user and just wrap their first name in like this H1 tag. So if I go to my React app, I'm getting no users. Let's try. Oh yeah, so this is fine. No users. because I default my state to an empty array, and I'm not using my set users function, so it's not changing. So here, instead of just logging my users, let's go ahead and set them to what they are, the res.data.data. And there we go. There's my users from the API.
What's the res.data part? I'm trying to see where that connects to.
So right here, this is the response. So if I do an Axios GET request to this website, to this site, I mean, I can type it in right here. That's what I'm doing. So this whole thing right here, this object, this is the response dot data. And if I look on here, there's an extra data key, which is my array of users. So when I refresh, when I do this GET request, I'm getting this res.data right here. And then I don't care about like this page per page total. I really just want the users. So I have to go into the res.data and grab the data key to grab these users. And then I can set my users to that array. Should actually be right here. There's my array of users. Then once I have them, I can render them. And then I map over them. They all have a first name and so forth. Something else that we've kind of been skipping over, I don't know if you've seen this, React's going to warn us that like, hey, each child should have this unique key prop. This is just like if you're ever doing a map function and creating an array of the JSX elements, React wants it to have a key prop. And this it has to be just something unique. So how you can fix this warning, it's fine if you don't, but for now, but then you just have this warning and then you're like, well, what is that? Let's fix that. I give this a key and I want to come up with something unique. So I can go ahead and use like the user.id. Now that gets rid of that warning. Maybe I could also interpolate the last name here. I'm going to need this interpolation. So if I wanted to grab like the first and last name, I could do some interpolation. And they have like an email. User.email. I think they have an image. So let's use an image tag. So we got to give this a source. And what was it? The key on this is avatar, and that links to just an image. So let's do source equals user.avatar. And there we go. Let's talk just a little about styling and inline styling. So we can use CSS to style. That's fine. I could come in here, give this div a class name, and then go to CSS and do that. Another thing you might see is inline styling, where I can just go here and like actually say, hey, style. Now, so this wants an object. So this first bracket is just saying, hey, this is JavaScript. And then I need a second bracket for the style object. So then I could do like border. 1 pixel solid. Try to get a border on this. So now they all have a border. Now I might want to add a whole bunch of like attributes on here, and this is going to get messy pretty quick. So what you might see happen is I come down here and create just like a styles object. This is just a JavaScript object that's going to have more objects in there. So I can do like, I have a styles.container, and now this can hold the styles for like my container. For like, maybe I should call this like, yeah, I think that's fine. That's a fine name. So then I can just here for my style, say styles.container. And there's my border. I'm just taking that object that I hard coded in here and throwing it down below just to clean it up. Because now I can, oh, maybe I want to get rid of the border and do like some, I'm all about the box shadow. Go to that box shadow. Let's pick one of these. That one looks good. Throw that in here. Now, something that's a little different with inline styling versus CSS styling, and I'll slack this out when I'm done, but this is how you would write this in CSS. I'm not in a CSS file, I'm in a JavaScript file. So like this dash, what is the dash in JavaScript?
When you just capitalize shadow?
Yeah, I mean, well, if I capitalize shadow, is that what you mean?
Well, I mean without the dash. Yeah.
Yeah, because this dash is actually it's trying to do minus. So it's trying to minus the variable box, which is undefined, minus shadow, which is undefined. But yeah, I want this to be a key. So this is a key. Now that's valid. Now this is invalid. So I just need to make this a string and get rid of that semicolon. So if you're doing inline styling and you're like copying over some CSS, you have to change that up a little. And then we could do like margin. Let's just do a little padding. Because yeah, if this was CSS, you would just say 10 pixels, but we need to wrap that in a string. And then separate these, since we're in an object, we need to separate these by commas. Let's actually do a little margin. 10 pixels. 40 pixels. Oops.
You messed up.
Thank you. Yeah, I spelled that wrong. See how much a little box shadow and some margin and padding can just make it look so much better. I mean, it's still like the organization of it's a little scheme-wampus, but that looks a lot better. Just take that out. From that to that with 3 CSS things. Cool. Questions on this? What time is it? I think this is another good time to take a break.
Can you slack out the code, please?
Yes. Cool. If there's no questions, let's take a break and just come back at 12. I'll stick around for a couple minutes if there are.
So that website, the list users, did you copy and paste that all into one of the other pages?
This this thing right here?
On the request, where it
Yes.
has all the code on the actual page itself, the request page. No, sorry, if you go to their website where they have all of that page 2, page 6, all the other stuff.
Are you talking about the stuff on the right?
I
I mean, that is their
think that's it. Yeah.
yeah.
So did you put that into your project or is it just grabbing it?
Yeah, it's got line 16. We're doing a get request to that URL. So
Okay.
this is called we're doing an Axios call to grab the data. And then
Oh.
it gets set to this response, and then the res.data.data, that is actually our list of users from here.
Yeah, it's not grabbing mine because it says my Axios is not defined.
Yeah, you
Did
forgot
I not
to
put it up? I didn't do that.
Axios.
There we go. Okay, so I have it, but it's having an error getting user. Why is it doing that?
So you're having to get, because I call the get users in my use effect, and then. Oh, are you getting this error occurred getting user?
Oh, yeah.
That means something in this section broke, probably. Because that's only going to run if something inside of here throws an error. So it'll be somewhere in probably in these 3 lines of code. You see, if you have your inspect open, you might, so if you're console.logging the error, you might get some more information too in your console. Because that error occurred getting users kind of not super specific.
So where do you open that console on it?
Let's do a right click and hit inspect.
Oh, it wasn't popping up for that. Okay.